Hi. What is evil? Some may say that evil is something you're born with. It's in your nature. Some may say that evil is some action that you do that labels you evil. But really, what is evil? Today, I'll be looking at two writers who have their own ideas on what it may be and the difference between how they view evil. First, Dante with his classic, the Inferno. Second, Shakespeare with the Scottish play. It is important to note that I will be referring to it as such because it is bad luck to refer to the play's actual name. But as far as I know, it's okay to refer to the character by name. So I'll be referring to him as Macbeth, but not the play itself.
With all that out of the way, let's get started.
First, how do these writers represent evil? And to start this off, we can look at the Scottish play. The Scottish play demonstrates strong representations of evil. One of these ways is through murder. Macbeth murders many people throughout the Scottish play. First Duncan, then the guards that actually guard Duncan, and he'll keep murdering people to cover up these lies until he eventually murders. There's nothing that makes these actions good. They're just bad. Or evil, even. Obviously, murder is bad. There's very little context in which murder might be good, and this is a good demonstration of when it is terrible, there's no redemption, and it is completely evil. This is just one of the ways that Shakespeare will represent characters as being evil. Another way is by using iambic pentameter. First, what is iambic pentameter? Essentially, it is a way in which characters will talk, where they will use a 10-beat rhythm, with 2 beats representing 1 heartbeat. It sounds like shaboom, 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 shaboom. A heartbeat. The only time in which characters that are human will not talk like this is if they are hurt,
As it shows that their heart is not working correctly.
However, outside of this, what does the heartbeat mean, really? Well, by examining the witches, we can see exactly what it means. The witches do not talk in iambic pentameter. Rather, they talk in a 7 heartbeat rhythm for most of the opening scene, which is where the witches can be most commonly found and have some of their most famous lines. 7 beats would sound somewhat like shaboom, 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 sha. There's only half of a heartbeat there. So what does this mean? Well, it doesn't just mean that the characters are evil. There are other things, one which I'll talk about in a little bit, that these characters do that defines them as evil. But there's an important correlation between a heartbeat not sounding human and being evil. So it's something to look for the next time you read through the Scottish play, if even that's something that you plan on doing. I don't know. The third way that Shakespeare will represent evil is through equivocation. First, what is equivocation? It's kind of a big word. Equivocation is using ambiguous language to present one idea while not actually showing what you really mean. The only way that it's actually used within the Scottish play is when characters are using equivocation for malicious purposes. The witches from the Scottish play, for example. The witches from the Scottish play will tell Macbeth that he cannot be killed by one of woman born. What does this mean exactly? At face value, it sounds like he just cannot be killed by a man. But there's more to the surface than that. For some reason, this means that only those who are born by giving birth through the birth canal are considered born. Those who are given birth to by a cesarean section are not considered one of woman born, and therefore are able to kill
Macbeth.
Now this obviously sounds absurd, but this is what Shakespeare does to present equivocation, and what the witches will say to Macbeth himself to present equivocation. These witches are using this equivocation for a malicious purpose, to see Macbeth become the king and make evil deeds come to life. I've barely touched on these, but it's time that I switch to Dante and his Inferno. Essentially, what Dante does to represent evil in the Inferno is through the sins, the different sins of each level. Some of the most important and popular ones that people may know of are wrath, heresy, and lust. The way that Dante presents lust is using a character who cheated on their husband, and they're sentenced to eternal storm because of this. Dante represents wrath by showing angry people who are mad all the time and beating up people throughout his life that he saw, and showing them in the hell beating up others as their punishment and taking beatings. Dante shows heretics as those who spread the false word of God. In Dante's idea, that was baptism. Baptism was the word of God throughout all of the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. So those who were spreading anything that was not in the Baptist ideal after baptism had become a thing, were sentenced as heretics and were sent into graves that were open and burning them until the second coming of Christ. I have very lightly touched on how these two writers will represent evil within their plays or their poems, but it's important to realize what this means. Dante's evil, of course, is a bit more out there, more religiously charged, but it still represents certain aspects of people that are bad. The evil that Shakespeare represents in the Scottish play is a bit more realistic, somewhat unrealistic still, but there's some aspects of it that we can take away still, like how using equivocation onto others is a bad idea, or how doing things for your own benefit isn't something that you should be planning on doing. And while I have very hastily and lightly touched on what these writers view as evil, it still is important to talk about them. Next, I wish to talk about what do these writers think about evil itself? That is, what is evil? But not in the same way that I just did. Not just what is a representation of evil, but what is evil at its core? Is evil something that we are born with? Or is it something that is gained? Well, luckily, both of these writers actually show what they think about evil in this aspect, and luckily, it's different, so I can talk about the similarities and differences on how they think about it. First, Dante. Dante believes that evil is not something that you start with, but something that you're given, something that you do that labels you evil. This can be seen in both the 3rd and 33rd canto of the Inferno. First, let's talk about the 3rd canto. So, in the 3rd canto, what is Dante doing? Well, he's just entered the very first gates of hell. He truly is in hell at this point. He isn't just outside of the gates talking to Virgil, who is his guide. And what is he doing in these first gates of hell? He's trying to find his way to the river such that he can get transported into the actual hell, not where he is right now. The place that he's in at Canto 3's time is a place that's kind of in between hell and not hell. It's an unnamed place that people don't often talk about, and that's important because that is completely representative of the people that are actually residing in this unnamed place, as they too have no name, they have no significance. There's nothing about them that makes them important in one way or another, whether it be good or bad. When Dante asks about where he is and what the souls really are, Virgil says, quote, "This is the sorrowful state of souls unsure, whose lives earned neither honor nor bad fame, and they are mingled with angels of that base sort, who neither rebellious to God nor faithful to him chose neither side, but kept themselves apart. Now heaven expels them, not to mar its splendor, and hell rejects them, lest the wicked of heart take glory over them. They have no hope of death, but a blind life, so abject they envy any other fate. To all memory of them, the world is deaf. Mercy and justice disdain them." It is important to recognize that both angels and humans go there. It is the lack of the human's actions in one's life that landed them there, and it is the lack of the angel's actions. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, sure, they could just have a lazy nature. Their nature was that was numb, that was nothing. And obviously those who are down lower in the Inferno had a nature that was evil. But this isn't accurate, and this can be seen in the second to last canto. In this canto, Dante and Virgil have made it almost all the way through the Inferno. They are now in the 9th circle and are encountering those who are traitors. Those who are traitors to their homeland, traitors to their kin, or traitors to their guests, even. This is seen as the worst of the sins, and that's why it's placed at the very bottom of the Inferno, as it is the closest to the middle, where the worst go. During their time traveling through here, Dante will encounter someone that he already knows. Someone that is living. Dante is curious about this, so he asks this person that he knows. The traitor responds with, quote, "Know that as soon as a soul commits betrayal the way I did, a devil displaces it and governs inside its body until its toll of years elapse." Once someone commits this sin that is so evil that it'll send them to the bottom of the Inferno, they are instantly sent there, and they do not get to live the rest of their life. Does this sound like nature or action to you? If it was nature, then wouldn't the devil just govern their body for the entire life? No, it is determined by action, meaning that one is not born evil, but in fact, one commits something that will label them evil. Shakespeare has to feel different about this, because of course he does. I wouldn't be making this video otherwise. Shakespeare views it differently. Evil is innate. This can be seen by looking at Act 1, Scene 1, and Act 1, Scene 3 specifically. Why these two scenes? Well, in the opening scene, one of the witches will say, "Fair is foul, and foul is fair." This may not sound important at first, but it really is. Because if you look at what Macbeth says as his opening line, he says, quote, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." Just a reminder, Macbeth has just come on stage for the first time this entire production. He's done absolutely nothing. Nothing. He hasn't been named the Thane of Cawdor. He hasn't talked to the witches. Nothing has happened. And yet he's still talking like the witches. It's in his nature to be evil, as he's repeating after the witches, who are a large symbol of evil throughout the entirety of the Scottish play. Another example of this is one of the witches will say, quote, "Something wicked this way comes." They say this and point their finger at the side of the stage that Macbeth will enter. Once again, Macbeth has done absolutely nothing. He isn't even on stage yet, and he's still being called evil. It's in his nature to be evil, and the witches recognize this, so they point it out to the audience. According to Shakespeare, evil is innate. According to Dante, it isn't. Who are you supposed to believe? I don't know, man. I'm just doing this for an English project. Like, I'm not gonna actually come up with a conclusion, am I? Conclusion. Evil can be seen represented in many different ways throughout media. Books, poems, movies, or other things. But writing plays and poems were the two main mediums that Shakespeare and Dante would use during their time, because obviously movies didn't exist. Duh. And it's important to note how they represented evil so that we can come to our own conclusions about evil. That's right. I made a video essay and I want you to come to your own conclusion about it. I just brought up some stuff, man. You don't even have to listen to me. Like I'm just here, and I'm done now. I'm going to go now. Does that make me evil if I'm doing this for my own benefit and I'm not actually providing you guys with something? Maybe that's your job to figure it out now. So have fun with that, Bye.